Some people demand attention. Sigma INFJs attract it effortlessly. They don't try to impress, perform, or explain, yet somehow their presence lingers long after they've left the room. It's the paradox that defines them. Too private to be understood, too deep to be forgotten. They live in layers few ever reach. You can sense their depth, but you'll never map it. You can feel their warmth, but you'll never fully hold it. They don't open up easily, not because they're cold, but because they guard their world like something sacred. When they finally let someone in, it's not casual, it's trust, earned through energy, not words. Their mystery isn't a game, it's protection. They've seen how easily sincerity gets twisted in shallow places. That's why their silence feels magnetic and their gaze feels heavy. It's not just eyes looking, it's a soul reading. Every interaction with them feels like a story you're still trying to understand. They make you reflect, think, and question parts of yourself you never noticed before. And when they disappear, as they often do, you realize how rare that energy was. Because in a world full of noise, they're the quiet echo that stays. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to BRAINY One, where we dive deep into the psychology, emotion, and hidden depth behind the INFJ and Sigma mind. And if you've watched until the end, comment quiet depth so I'll know you're one of the few who understand that real connection isn't loud, it's felt. They guard their inner world carefully, only truth earns access. For a Sigma INFJ, the inner world is sacred ground, not a space for tourists. They protect it with quiet precision, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. They've learned that not everyone deserves a front row seat to their thoughts, their emotions, or their peace. Their boundaries aren't walls, they're filters, and only truth, consistency, and genuine energy make it through. They see everything before they let you in, the tone of your words, the rhythm of your silence, the sincerity behind your eyes. They read energy like most people read text, so when they seem distant at first, it's not rejection, it's discernment. They're observing if your intentions match your words, if your empathy is real, or if your presence feels heavy with expectation. Because once they open that door, it's not temporary, it's emotional investment. They don't crave connection, they crave alignment. They'd rather stand alone in truth than be surrounded by falseness. That's why they choose depth over company, solitude over shallow comfort. To them, privacy isn't isolation, it's preservation. Their silence is their sanctuary, the place where they think clearly, heal quietly, and rebuild their strength away from the noise of the world. Most people don't realize how intentional their distance is. It's not coldness, it's control. When a Sigma INFJ opens up, it's because they've already seen who you are beneath your performance. They've measured your energy, tested your consistency, and sensed whether your soul feels safe to stand beside. That's why being led into their world feels rare, because it is. Once you're inside, you see the depth that others never notice, the thoughts that run like poetry, the sensitivity that turns observation into art, the strength that hides behind softness. You realize their privacy wasn't secrecy, it was strength disguised as silence. And suddenly, their guarded nature makes sense. Because when you've carried that much depth in a shallow world, protection becomes instinct. They don't guard themselves to shut people out, they do it to keep their light from being dimmed by those who can't handle its glow. Only truth earns access, only patience earns trust, and only those who see beyond the surface ever get to see what the Sigma INFJ has been quietly protecting all along. Their silence holds emotional weight, it makes people feel seen and unsettled at once. When a Sigma INFJ goes quiet, it's not emptiness, it's awareness. Their silence isn't passive, it's powerful. It's the kind that fills a room without sound, the kind that makes people adjust their tone, their words, even their posture, because deep down, everyone feels it. They're being seen, and not just their words or actions, but their energy, their motives, their truth. There's something about that gaze, calm, steady, unshaken. It's not confrontational, yet it exposes what people try to hide. They don't need to interrogate, their stillness does it for them. Fake confidence crumbles under it. Hidden guilt surfaces. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting back what others thought they buried. People aren't used to that kind of attention. They're used to noise, validation, distraction, performance. But as Sigma INFJs, silence strips all that away. It's the emotional version of standing under bright light. Suddenly, there's nowhere to hide. And that's what makes people both drawn to them and unnerved by them. Because for the first time, they're not being heard, they're being understood. That quiet presence has gravity. It slows things down, forces honesty. You can't fake energy around someone who listens with their whole being. Their silence isn't absence, it's focus. Every small gesture, every subtle shift, every hesitation, they catch it all. And while others rush to respond, they just observe. It's this restraint that gives them an edge. While everyone else reveals themselves through constant talking, they reveal nothing, yet see everything. That's why their silence feels heavy. It carries empathy, insight, and truth all at once. It doesn't need to prove intelligence, it radiates it. People remember that energy long after the conversation ends. They replay it in their heads, wondering what the INFJ saw, what they noticed, what they understood but didn't say. That mystery stays. It leaves a mark, not because of what was spoken, but because of what was felt. Their silence has layers: compassion, intuition, and calm power intertwined. It doesn't push or pull, it simply exists, and that alone reveals everything it needs to. Because when a Sigma INFJ falls silent, it isn't withdrawal, it's revelation. They don't need to raise their voice to expose truth, they just have to look, listen, and let the quiet do what words never could. They connect deeply, but selectively. Not everyone can handle their intensity. For a Sigma INFJ, connection isn't casual, it's sacred. They don't bond for convenience or out of loneliness. They connect to understand, to feel, to merge energies. And when they do, it's never halfway. They dive. They feel the currents beneath someone's words, sense the wounds hidden behind a smile, and understand emotions people haven't even named yet. But that kind of connection, the real soul-level one, isn't meant for everyone. Their energy runs deep and depth demands stability. That's why they're selective. They've learned the hard way that not everyone can breathe in deep waters. Some people drown in authenticity, some flinch at vulnerability, and some, when faced with real emotion, retreat to the shallow comfort of small talk and masks. The Sigma INFJ doesn't judge that. They just withdraw, quietly, gracefully. They protect their depth like treasure because once given freely, it's easily exploited. When they find someone who matches their emotional wavelength, everything changes. Conversations flow like music, honest, unforced, timeless. They feel safe enough to open the vault, to show their thoughts, their intensity, their imagination. But the irony, those who experience it often find it overwhelming. The Sigma INFJ's presence demands emotional truth, and truth terrifies those who've spent their lives performing. So they remain selective, not out of arrogance, but out of self-preservation. Their heart doesn't beat for crowds, it beats for connection. They'd rather have one soul who truly gets them than 100 who only like them. It's quality over quantity, depth over noise, meaning over momentary pleasure. And this intensity, this unwavering standard, is what makes them unforgettable. They touch people's lives in ways that feel almost spiritual, yet vanish just as quietly. Those who've been close to a Sigma INFJ never forget it. It's not about romance or friendship, it's about impact. Their words, their silence, their understanding, it leaves an emotional fingerprint that time can't erase. Because when they connect, they give energy that heals, challenges, and awakens. And when they walk away, the absence feels louder than presence. They don't connect to be remembered, but they always are. Their depth is too rare, their energy too pure. And once you've felt it, nothing shallow ever feels the same again. Their empathy reveals layers in others that most ignore. A Sigma INFJ doesn't just listen, they feel. Their empathy isn't a reaction, it's a radar. It scans beneath tone, posture, and words to pick up the emotional truth most people hide, even from themselves. When they talk to you, it's not surface-level understanding, it's emotional translation. They can feel sadness behind laughter, sense frustration in politeness, and detect truth in hesitation. Their empathy is like a mirror that reflects the parts of you you didn't even know were showing. Most people go through life unseen, heard maybe, but not felt. The Sigma INFJ changes that instantly. In their presence, walls start to crumble. People find themselves revealing stories they've never told, memories they've buried, or feelings they can't name. It's not manipulation, it's resonance. The INFJ's empathy vibrates at the same frequency as human pain and hope. They don't force people to open up, they simply make it safe to. This gift is both blessing and burdened, because when you can see that much, you can't unsee it. They carry emotional truths that aren't theirs, memories that weren't meant to stay. Their heart becomes a library of other people's stories, some beautiful, others heavy. And while most overlook the layers in others, the INFJ walks around feeling them all at once. That's why they need solitude, not to escape, but to exhale. Their empathy acts like an X-ray for the soul. They pick up the emotional contradictions others ignore, the kindness hiding behind anger, the fear disguised as arrogance, the longing behind detachment. They don't judge it, they just understand. And that understanding alone can change someone. Because being seen without explanation, that's rare. That's healing. But their empathy also intimidates. Some people feel exposed around them, uncomfortable with how transparent they suddenly become. They mistake understanding for judgment, when in truth, the INFJ isn't judging anyone. They're just feeling everything. That's why their connections feel so deep and unforgettable. They don't love halfway, they don't listen halfway, they don't see halfway. They meet you exactly where your truth lives, even when you've forgotten where that is. Your empathy doesn't just reveal others, it awakens them. It reminds people that depth still exists in a world too afraid to feel. And that realization alone makes the Sigma INFJ impossible to forget. They disappear, often not to run away, but to recharge and reflect. When a Sigma INFJ vanishes, it confuses people. One day they're present, calm, kind, deeply engaged. The next, they're gone. No warning, no explanation, just quiet distance. But what most don't understand is that their disappearance isn't rejection, it's recovery. For them, solitude isn't loneliness, it's medicine. It's the only way to process the world that constantly overstimulates their mind and drains their soul. They absorb energy everywhere they go. Every conversation, every emotion, every glance leaves an imprint. They carry it all. Other people's sadness, frustration, joy, fear. It's like being a sponge in a thunderstorm. Eventually, they overflow. So they disappear not to escape others, but to find themselves again, to return to center, to breathe without absorbing. In solitude, they rebuild quietly. They reflect on what they've learned, who they've met, and how deeply they've felt. Their mind replays everything, not to dwell, but to understand. What did that moment mean? What was the lesson behind that silence? The INFJ's introspection isn't self-pity, it's strategy. Every withdrawal is growth disguised as distance. People often take their absence personally. They think the INFJ is done with them or bored or detached. But the truth is, they're resetting their energy, making space to feel clearly again. They can't offer emotional presence when their own tank is empty. That's why they choose isolation over forced interaction. Because for them, authenticity matters more than consistency. And when they come back, they're not the same. They return calmer, sharper, wiser. Their silence transforms into clarity. Their distance becomes perspective. They see things they couldn't see before, about others, about themselves, about life. Their disappearances are chapters of evolution. The irony is, people miss them most when they're gone. That's the paradox of their presence. It's felt strongest in absence. You don't realize how grounding their energy was until the noise returns without them. That's the INFJ's quiet power. They leave, yet somehow their energy stays. They disappear not to hide, but to heal. They reflect not to retreat, but to return stronger. And when they do, they come back not with explanations, but with peace. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a Sigma INFJ can do is simply vanish to remember who they are. Their calm presence exposes insincerity without a word. A Sigma INFJ doesn't need to call anyone out. Their energy does it for them. Their calmness has a strange power. It's like emotional truth serum. Around them, masks start to slip, voices waver, and fake confidence begins to crumble. It's not magic, it's awareness. Their stillness makes people confront themselves. Because when someone radiates quiet authenticity, anything artificial starts to feel uncomfortable. They don't interrupt or challenge, they simply observe. Their steady gaze and composed silence create a kind of mirror effect. People see their own reflection, not the one they present to the world. And in that reflection, every inconsistency becomes visible. The fake smile, the forced laughter, the exaggerated story. Their calm doesn't accuse, it reveals. It's disarming because it's not reactive, it's reflective. The Sigma INFJ has no interest in exposing others publicly. They expose truth privately through energy. When they walk into a room, the tone changes. People feel seen, not through judgment, but through understanding. And for the insincere, that's the most unsettling thing in the world. They can't manipulate someone who won't engage in performance. They can't dominate someone who refuses to play the emotional game. Their composure is their armor. They stay centered even when others try to provoke them. They've mastered emotional control, and that's what gives them quiet power. The more someone tries to create chaos, the calmer they become. It's not detachment, it's strength, because they know the one who stays calm always sees clearer. What others mistake for coldness is actually emotional intelligence. The Sigma INFJ doesn't react because they already understand. They sense the motive behind every move. They know when words are masks and when kindness is currency. That's why fakeness never lasts long around them. It simply dissolves under the weight of truth. This calm exposure doesn't need confrontation, it needs presence, and that's what makes them unforgettable. People leave a conversation with them feeling stripped of pretense, not because the INFJ said anything harsh, but because they didn't have to. Their peace is piercing, their silence unmasks, and their presence alone reveals what words try to hide. Because in a world full of performance, the calmest person in the room isn't just peaceful, they're powerful. The Sigma INFJ's stillness doesn't shout truth, it radiates it. They love with depth, not frequency, and that makes it unforgettable. A Sigma INFJ doesn't love often, but when they do, it's all or nothing. Their love isn't shallow or impulsive, it's slow, intentional, and rare. They don't fall for faces or words, they fall for energy, depth, and truth. When they care for someone, it's not out of need, it's out of recognition. Something in you matches something in them, and that resonance becomes impossible to ignore. But that kind of love isn't lightweight, it's heavy, rich, and unforgettable. They don't love halfway. Their affection runs through layers most people never even explore. They'll understand you deeper than you understand yourself, your moods, your silences, your unspoken fears. They'll remember what calms you, what triggers you, what makes you light up. And when they give emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all at once. It's not love for attention. It's love as a mirror of understanding. But this depth comes at a price, because once you've felt love like that, everything else feels thin. Most people aren't ready for it. They crave the warmth, but can't handle the fire. The Sigma INFJ doesn't do surface affection. They bond through truth. And truth, for many, is terrifying. It demands vulnerability. It exposes weakness. It requires reciprocity. And when it's not returned with the same honesty, the INFJ's heart quietly withdraws. Not in anger, but in self-respect. That's why their love lingers long after they're gone. You'll remember the calm in their voice, the way they listened without judgment, the way they made you feel seen. They imprint not through words, but through presence. Because while others love loudly, the INFJ loves deeply, and deep love echoes. They may move on silently, but their energy stays in your memory. You'll find yourself missing the peace they brought, the understanding they gave freely, the emotional safety you didn't realize you had until it was gone. They don't love often because their love is transformational. It changes both people, it refines, it teaches, it awakens, and when it ends, it doesn't break, it expands. Their love is a rare frequency, one you only recognize once you've lost it. And that's why those who've been loved by a Sigma INFJ never truly forget them. Because once you've been seen at that depth, surface love never feels like enough again. Their boundaries confuse shallow people who expect constant access. A Sigma INFJ doesn't believe love means availability. They know the difference between connection and consumption. Their time, their energy, and their emotions are sacred, and not everyone earns them. When they set boundaries, it's not an act of defiance, it's an act of preservation. Yet to shallow people, the ones used to attention on demand, those boundaries feel like rejection. They can't understand that silence isn't punishment. They can't understand that silence isn't punishment. It's balance. For the Sigma INFJ, access is a privilege, not a right. They give their presence to those who respect it, not those who drain it. They know that too much exposure leads to emotional erosion. Every deep thinker learns that not everyone deserves to witness your depth. That's why they pull back when energy starts to feel forced or one-sided. It's not about control, it's about protecting their peace. People who live on surface-level validation find this unsettling. They expect constant replies, constant attention, constant emotional availability, but the INFJ operates differently. They give deeply, then retreat to recharge. Their love doesn't disappear, it just needs space to breathe. To someone who equates love with constant access, this feels like abandonment. To the INFJ, it's maintenance. It's how they stay grounded enough to love authentically. Their boundaries are gentle but firm. They'll listen when you speak, but they won't absorb every complaint. They'll empathize, but not endlessly at their own expense. And if someone crosses that invisible line, manipulating, guilting, or overstepping, they'll withdraw completely, not with anger, but with quiet finality. Because once peace is broken, distance becomes necessary. What confuses shallow people most is that the Sigma INFJ doesn't chase after setting boundaries. They don't explain, justify, or beg to be understood. They just go silent. And that silence speaks volumes. It says, you had access to my mind, my heart, my presence, and you took it for granted. And that realization hits harder than any argument ever could. To the INFJ, boundaries aren't barriers, they're respect in action. They create space where authenticity can thrive and energy can flow freely. Because the truth is simple, not everyone deserves constant access to deep souls, and those who mistake boundaries for rejection were never meant to stay close in the first place. They leave a lasting impression because authenticity leaves an echo. You don't forget a Sigma INFJ. You might lose contact, move on, or think you've outgrown the connection, but one day, in a quiet moment, you'll remember how they made you feel. That calm, that honesty, that rare feeling of being seen without needing to perform. Their presence lingers not because they demand attention, but because they never faked it. In a world built on image and noise, their authenticity rings louder than any performance. And so, they don't try to impress, they express. They don't talk to fill silence, they speak to connect. Every word, every gesture, every glance feels intentional. People are drawn to that energy because it's grounding, real in a way that's becoming extinct. The Sigma INFJ doesn't have to prove their worth, they simply are. And that truth has gravity. It leaves an imprint on anyone who gets close enough to experience it. When they walk away, their absence doesn't fade, it deepens. The world feels a little noisier, little emptier. You realize how rare it was to be around someone who didn't want anything from you but your truth. Someone who saw through your walls, yet didn't try to break them. Just waited patiently until you felt safe enough to lower them yourself. That kind of connection changes people. It recalibrates their standard for what's real. The Sigma INFJ's energy has a way of haunting the soul, not painfully, but profoundly. Their kindness wasn't performative, their honesty wasn't brutal, it was cleansing, and their presence, though quiet, carried an unspoken depth that made people question themselves long after the conversation ended. What makes them unforgettable isn't charm or mystery, it's integrity. They show up the same whether they're loved or misunderstood. They don't chase approval, and they don't bend to fit in. Their authenticity echoes because it's rare, and rare things resonate long after they're gone. You don't miss their words, you miss their energy. You don't remember what they said, you remember how peaceful it felt to be around them. That's the paradox of the Sigma INFJ. They move quietly, but their impact is permanent. Because while others leave noise behind, they leave truth, and truth once felt can never be forgotten. Some people leave noise behind. Sigma INFJs leave clarity. Their energy lingers in silence, their presence echoes in memory, and their authenticity never fades. You don't meet souls like this twice, and if you do, you recognize them instantly. If this spoke to you, you're part of the rare few who value depth over attention and truth over performance. You're one of the minds that think deeper, feel stronger, and move quieter. And that's exactly what this community is about. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to BRAINY One, where we explore the rare psychology behind INFJs, Sigma minds, and the quiet strength that shapes them. And now we're taking it one step further. I've just opened a new private Telegram channel for those who want to go beyond the videos, where we share deeper insights, stories, and exclusive content on emotional intelligence, quiet power, and inner transformation. Join now and become part of the movement of deep thinkers. The link is in the pinned comment and description below. And if you've watched until the end, comment quiet death below so I'll know you're one of the few who truly feel before they speak.